Well, hello again, and welcome to the DMZ America podcast. It is Thursday, January 18th, 2024. I'm editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis, and I'll be coming to you from the right.
And I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall. And this one time I'll be coming to you from the left.
Well, until we start bombing, until, New York starts bombing Alabama, which doesn't seem to be that far-fetched at this stage.
You know it's coming the other way.
It has before, and it's so funny. There are bumper stickers down here in Alabama where I live that say, North 1, South 0, halftime.
That's fucking great.
Yeah, it's
however, it's like, I don't know. What's funny is if there was a rematch, I'm not sure that the South has really fixed its primary the reasons that it lost, right? I mean, is the South must be still less industrial than the North.
Oh no, I think we're
today.
More. A lot of the plants came south. We in Alabama,
we
have a Honda plant. Right. We have Honda, Mercedes, Hyundai, and Honda plants.
Well, you have Honda. Honda's the main one's in Ohio.
Okay, but we got one of them too. So
right.
Okay. So that's a push. But
you guys have like what? You guys have Nissan and Tennessee is Nissan, I think.
Yeah, Tennessee, but I'm just saying Alabama specifically. We have Mercedes, which is, Nazis coming to the South. Wonder what the attraction could possibly have been.
Yeah, can't imagine.
But here's the thing, Ted. Let me put this to you this way. I mean, now versus the 1860s, would anyone give their life to defend Toledo? Truly?
As in the Holy Toledo thing?
Yeah, well, just to defend Dayton.
Yeah, I don't think so.
It's like you can have it. You're gonna have it.
It's one of the best reviews I ever read was in Lonely Planet Guide for God, what was the town that what's her name was from? Joan of Arc, Orleans. She was from Orleans, and she was near Orleans. And she led a glorious battle that involved a lot of sacrifice to recapture Orleans from the British. And anyway, so the guidebook that introduces Orleans says, describes that episode, and it says, it is doubtful that she would go to that effort today.
Yeah, I've never been. Have you ever been there?
I have been, and I will say that my then ex-wife and I walked in. We had an interracial marriage, and we walked into a bar, and we were immediately felt very much like we had walked into an Alabama shit kicker bar, like right before the Clavern was meeting. It was full of National Front type of Jean-Marie Le Pen types.
Goodness.
And it was like, but then I was like, we're New Yorkers, fuck them. We sat down and had a drink.
Well, I mean, the world is exploding. Just before we started recording, I mentioned to Ted that I'd heard just a few hours ago, and I need Ted to give me some clarification here, that Pakistan has dropped some bombs on Iran. The United States, of course, and its ally Britain is dropping bombs on Houthis in Yemen. Obviously Gaza is still doing what Gaza is doing, and so is the West Bank, as is the southern border between of Lebanon with Israel. So yeah, the whole place is blowing up, man. It's blowing up. So and of course the United States also got their troops got attacked by friends of Iran, and now we're bombing them back. And now where's this? Okay, first and foremost, let's start with Pakistan. The freshest bombing. Pakistan bombs Iran. What caused it, and what? I mean, this to the American mind, who doesn't pay much attention, and I consider myself one of them. What the fuck, Ted?
What's happening? So first of all, sorry, I'm waiting for a call from my broker. I'm moving all my stock over to defense contracting.
Smart,
Boeing, Northrop Grumman.
Yeah, who's making the drones? Because that's
Oh, everyone makes drones now. Yeah, Boeing, everybody. As long as the door doesn't blow out, it's all good fun. So yeah, so let me explain. So this is a good analogy, I think. So some Americans, at least people who are sophisticated enough to listen to the DMZ America podcast, may be familiar with the situation in Kurdistan, right? So Kurdistan, the Kurds were fucked over at the end of World War I. They were promised their own country. And that would have basically taken a bit of what is today Iraq and a bit of what is today Turkey. And so what happened is during the sort of after the post-US invasion of Iraq, the Kurds revolted and they carved away their own sort of like de facto little heartland in northern Iraq, which is now basically Kurdistan. There are also their countrymen, their fellow tribesmen, the Kurds, are also across the border in Turkey. In Turkey, however, they're just like random people. They don't have like any territory that is their own. They don't have any autonomy. And in fact, they're cracked down upon and their party is considered a terrorist organization by the Turkish government. So they're kind of an oppressed minority. In Iraq, they were an oppressed minority under Saddam. Once Saddam was toppled under the US, they were able to take advantage of the chaos in the civil war in Iraq to basically carve out their little homeland. And now Kurdistan is sort of de facto an autonomous zone. It's de facto a country. It has its own currency, government, stamps, the whole 9 yards. So basically, but still, the settled status of the Kurds is that they are a people who are effectively stateless, who spread over a border. Similar situation in Afghanistan. The Pashtun people are divided by something called the Durand Line. And half of them are on the Afghan side, the other half are on the Pakistani side. There's dreams of creating a greater Pashtunistan. And that's kind of like been part of the reason that, you hear about the Afghan Taliban, the Pakistani Taliban. That's basically Pashtun people on both sides of the border. That's why they call it State Department people. Old hands call it AFPAC, because Afghanistan and Pakistan are kind of so similar and their politics are so intertwined. That border is artificial, the Durand Line that was drawn by a British cartographer. Now, let's move to Balochistan. Balochistan is...
Oh, now you're just making words up.
So the Balochis, Baluchi, these are...
You're not kidding.
No, not at all.
All right.
The Baluch, this whole thing that
like John Belushi.
I'm getting to the point here. The Baluchis are not to be confused with John Belushi and Samurai Delicatessen. That was different. This is the Baluchis live in. They do not have a homeland, but they aspire to have their own country. And they live across the border. Part of them live in Pakistan and part of them live on the other side of the border in Iran. So basically there's ethnic enclaves. Unlike the Kurds, there's no autonomy whatsoever. Now, the Baluchis are a martial people. They definitely are, they're aggressive. They have national pride. They want their own country. And there is an independence movement on both sides of the border where they're agitating for independence, both from Iran and from Pakistan, together and separately. That's kind of where this all starts. So this latest episode began about 48 hours ago when the Iranians launched a missile attack against what they said was a terrorist group. In other words, a radical group within the Baluchi section of Pakistan. The Pakistanis decided to retaliate, but they didn't retaliate against what I would call, well, it's Iran proper, of course, but they retaliated against the Baluchi section of Iran. I mean, a cynic might look at this and say, well, kind of like maybe you guys are just working on this mopping up operation together. It's like a crisscross situation, like throw mama from the train, like I kill someone you want me to kill, you kill someone I want you to kill. And so it's a little bit like that. But I don't think it worked. I don't think that's really what happened. I really think the dynamic here is Iran right now is a big swinging dick in the Middle East. US foreign policy, as usual, has had the exact opposite 180-degree effect of its intent. intent of U.S. policy since the revolution has been to isolate Iran, control, keep it completely economically wounded, militarily gelded, impossible. Even though it's the natural cultural and military leader, economic powerhouse of the Middle East, it's the biggest country. It has thousands of years of civilization. But the point is that what has happened here is that the Israeli attack on Gaza has greatly emboldened and increased the prestige of the Iranians. The Iranians' biggest problem was never the US. The Iranians' biggest problem was that they were Shia. And in a world that is full of Sunni countries, they're the only Shia majority country in the world. There's tons of Sunni majority countries. There's not only one Shia one. And so it was always hard for the Iranians to get any other Muslim countries to join them in any kind of endeavor because they were Shia. The Sunni-Shia divide goes back 1,300 years. But this time, the Iranians have been carefully over the decades cultivating their proxies throughout the Middle East, Hamas being one of them. And so when Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th, a lot of Muslims, and not just Palestinians, looked at that and said, look at that, man. They got one on the scoreboard. For once, it's not us getting our asses kicked. For once, it's the Israelis getting their asses kicked. That never happens. And so they're like, and look at the Iranians, man. They're boss. They were funding and arming them. And then, as if that wasn't good enough for the Iranians, it's like next to the plate, Hezbollah in Lebanon. It's like, oh, who's supporting them? The Iranians are like, oh yeah, that's us. That's right. We bad. And then it's like they've got proxies all over the place. They have the Badr organization in Iraq. They've got all sorts of, the Iranians are, they have all these organizations, both Sunni and Shia, who work with them, not for them, but with them, and that they help support. So that's made them very powerful. And now they kind of feel like Israel is really, their calculus is that Israel has fucked up. They've bitten off more than they can chew. They're probably on the way out internationally. The US is attached to Israel, and the US's role in the Middle East has also been severely compromised because the US looks like shit because of what's going on in Gaza. So Iran's like, we're just going to flex our muscles a little bit here, and we're going to show that we can't be fucked with. So they had that terrorist bombing at the funeral service for the general who was assassinated by Trump's drone 4 years ago in Iraq. And at that, ISIS-K claimed responsibility. This is kind of a pretext. ISIS-K is not based among the Balochis. Okay, it's like it just isn't. But the Iranians are like, yeah, we're going to break something just to show that we can. I mean, everyone else does. Look at the Houthis. They're bombing ships in the Red Sea. You know, the Americans, the Israelis are bombing the Damascus airport in Syria like every other day. Nothing ever happens to them. The Israelis have flattened Gaza. Nothing ever happens to them. And we're going to throw some missiles just to show that we have a big dick too. So they launched a couple of missiles into the Balochi area, figuring that the Pakistanis might not much care, because even though it's a violation of their sovereignty, it's like these are the people, they're killing people that the Pakistani government in Islamabad doesn't really much care about. And they were not really wrong, but Pakistani people on the street have a lot of national pride, and they don't take kindly to any kind of violation of their sovereignty, like the SEAL Team 6 raid that killed bin Laden. So they were like, well, we got to do. So the government was like, we got to do something. We got to kill some folks. But hey, we could kill Balochis. We don't like Balochis, even if they're on the Iranian side of the border. So they're like, Pakistanis, and we'll launch back. At this point, I don't think this escalates to a full-fledged ground war between Iran and Pakistan, at least not yet. And it won't if no one does anything stupid. But what we have overall is a very August 1914 situation where we have missiles flying all over the Middle East. And all it's going to take is one fucking archduke to take the wrong turn down the street in Sarajevo, and the whole thing is going to blow up.
So, okay, thank you for that. But it still paints Iran as the pariah in all of this right now. They're the ones who are, well, you just said they're lobbing missiles here. They're
not the pariah. They're the big swinging dicks. They're the bosses.
but no, but they're okay.
They're the big winners from this whole thing.
They're not. How are they winning? I mean, they
I just
just got
told you.
bombs.
I just explained it.
I heard it. I don't see how that's winning if you're actually losing.
Remember, they don't
If
care what you think or what I think or what Clovis thinks. They care what Muslims and the Arab world think. And that their status in the Muslim world has like skyrocketed since October 7th.
I mean, in what way? I mean, and how does that translate into anything? I mean, how's that translate into any practical purpose?
Well, right now it's about gaining in terms of practical purpose. At this point, Iran now controls proxies throughout the Middle East, so they can exert pressure on the host governments in those places. I mean, look at Lebanon. It's not even a real country. It's a militia that happens to have government goes with it.
And the cool flag.
They basically control Lebanon. So Iran has like rents Lebanon. Iran has like a pretty good influence in Syria. It has great, and it kind of rents Iraq. It's like basically it's economic and political and military influence. You can see how that's useful.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, but in practical terms, I don't see how it's useful.
I can think of I can think of one big practical term.
Okay, give it to me.
You want to bring this in for a soft landing? There's only one fucking way. Biden, or someone more likely who can speak English, calls up the Ayatollahs and says, we're really sorry about this whole, like, these sanctions that we have against you. Could you like call off your dogs? Because if you could, we might be able to move toward normalization and reintegrate you into the global economy. That's an example. I mean, right, but they're getting leverage from this.
Well, they thought they did, but the Obama administration tried that with the big pallet o' money. And they said, okay, great. We're going to give these to people who are blowing up American soldiers. Thank you so much. They missed an opportunity there. They seemed very Palestinian-esque in that they had an opportunity to do what you just suggested, or at least start on that.
But remember, they don't care about what we think. They care about what Muslims think. They care what we think secondarily, but we're not the priority here. I mean, I think that like you're looking at it from an American-centric point of view here. You have to look at it from an Iran-centric point of view. You have to look at it from their point of view. Like, where do they live? They live in a neighborhood where they've got Afghanistan on one side. I mean, talk about a rowdy neighbor. You've got Iraq on the other side, another seriously rowdy neighbor. Okay, nothing much is happening with Turkmenistan, like, ever. You've got, Yemen isn't far away. They've got to deal with the fucking Saudis, who they're in a proxy war in Yemen, involved in. So, I mean, here's the thing. Iran doesn't fight directly, but they have a lot of chips on various squares at the roulette table, and a lot of those chips are winning. So they're like, their numbers are coming up, and they're like, we're looking and feeling good. That's what this is about.
Okay, but if you're saying that they're looking towards normalization and become rejoining the world community,
to make more money.
Okay, but by doing what they're doing, that's
how they're going to get there.
How do you get there if nobody likes you? I mean,
everybody likes them. Right now, the entire Arab street loves them.
Okay, but again, well, you talk about them not caring what America thinks. The world doesn't care what the Arab street thinks.
Well, they do, because literally Iran can blow up the entire Middle East all by itself. I mean, Iran can start World War III like today. It's like, like the Americans, they might tell the Americans, you don't want World War III? You got to deal with us. You've got to give us what we want.
I don't see that as getting you what you want, which is, a prestige. I can't imagine they like the sanctions, although the sanctions haven't killed their economy, but it's hurt it.
They have way too much oil for that.
So, but I think they would like to establish, I think a majority of Iranians would like to rejoin the world community. And I know
everyone would. All of them would.
Yeah. And so, but this doesn't allow you to do that. This has the opposite effect.
I mean, Scott, look, the Iranians tried playing nice for years. Nothing happened. You know, one administration after another, Democrat and Republican, did not do anything for them, did not normalize relations, kept them frozen out. Once you get American sanctions, once you put them on, they're like herpes. They never go away. It's like look at the ones we have against Cuba. Any day now, those are going to work.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, you're right. But I think too, but you can't say Iran played nice. I mean,
they did so. I mean, like, for example, in 2001, when the United States invaded Afghanistan, don't forget, Iran hated the Taliban, hated them. They almost went to war with the Taliban. The Taliban slaughtered, they invaded the Iranian consulate in Mazar-e Sharif and killed all of their staff. So, they weren't pleased about this. And so they almost went to war against Afghanistan. And so when the US went to war against the Taliban, Iran was delighted. And they sent a message to Washington, like, anything we can do to help, you just let us know. And they did all sorts of goodwill stuff. They sent the CIA all of their intel on the Taliban. And when at one point a U.S. fighter jet was I don't think it was shot down. I think it had mechanical problems and it crash landed in Western Afghanistan near the Iranian border. The Iranians swept in with commandos, rescued the pilot, as well as all the key data and recorders and everything. And as a goodwill gesture, promptly returned the pilot and all the stuff that they could have taken from the plane to the United States to say, we're trying to do you a solid here. We're trying to show you we want to work together. But the Bush administration was like, thanks, and didn't follow up. So they have done stuff like this stuff. There have been numerous incidents over the years where the Iranians have tried to make nice with the US. And let's not forget, it was always the US that was wrong in that relationship. I mean, the US sicked Saddam Hussein against Iran in the Iran-Iraq War from 1980 to 1986, and so on. But even so, the Iranians always tried to be nice, and they always had their hand out, ready to shake hands, make peace. The U.S. was always like, fuck off.
I don't know how you can come to those conclusions, Ted, when you had weekly marches in the street and Death to America days. And
so?
What do you mean so?
I don't understand your point. That's just like, okay, I mean, they can no more control that than the US could control John McCain saying bomb, bomb, bomb Iran. I mean, that's domestic garbage. But the point is, at the highest levels, the Iranian government has always wanted to have normalized relations with the US, and the US has always slapped them in the face.
I don't see. I'm trying to think of what the hell you're talking about. When have they stretched out a friendly hand? Now the
pilot thing that I just mentioned.
Okay, that's one. That's goodwill there. And the Obama administration obviously extended a hand, and it blew back on them in a big bad way.
I don't see what the Iranians did wrong there. Look, the U.S. is constantly.
They killed American soldiers. I would start with that. Killing an American. Where? In Iraq. There are proxies in Iraq.
They're not supposed to be there.
Ted, it doesn't matter then. You can't say that, yeah, you're not supposed to be there.
Oh, come on. That is ridiculous. That's ridiculous. It's like, okay, so Iran has a proxy army. They have the Badrs and other people in militias in Iraq. The US goes over there to invade halfway around the world where they have no business being. And so some of their proxies killed some of our proxies. So,
I mean, proxies. These are American soldiers. These are citizens of the United States.
Illegally invading in a place that they have no business being, and there's no like UN mandate or anything. I don't know. It's like, that is the US going to pick a fight. That is ridiculous. You know what that's analogous to? That is like Iran sends troops to Mexico, invades Mexico, and then US-backed Mexican militias kill Iranian soldiers, and the Iranians say, how dare you? I mean,
Yeah, I mean that's
but then we're like, why are you Iranian fucks in Mexico right near our border, assholes? And that's what the Iranians are saying. Why are you right near our border, fucks? Like, this is like,
no. I think there's a more malicious and malignant policy by Tehran and by, I always mispronounce this, Guam chewing gum, whatever it's called. The place where the Gum, where the Ayatollah lives. And these are, I mean, these were targeting American soldiers to kill Americans, just to show, what happens to infidels when they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. And we can debate Iraq, and you and I agree on how stupid the invasion was, but by turns, no, I mean, there should be Pax Romana. I mean, I truly believe that you are an American citizen. You are protected by the might of the United States. And if anyone fucks with you anywhere on the planet, we will come down on you like a hammer. And
you can have that attitude, but it's like no one else buys in.
Well,
that's your call. That's up to you.
Then they get bombed. But now, what is Iran? I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, Iran bombing everybody. I honestly don't see. And like I said, maybe you're right. Maybe they're not looking to impress the international community. They're looking to impress the Arab street, which doesn't get you a hell of a lot most times. I mean, let's face it. I'm thinking of the Arab Spring, which was started with great optimism and ended pretty much the way most of us thought it would, which is with tanks and troops and and bullets.
Yeah. So in no small part, thanks to the Obama administration that backed up, General al-Sisi's military coup against the uprising, the rebellion against Mubarak, right, the dictator of Egypt in Tahrir Square and all that. I mean, the Egypt was on its way to possibly having a democracy, and Obama decided, like, yeah, we're not going to let you do that.
Now what administration backed the coup in Ukraine?
Which one? Well, the 2014 coup.
Yeah.
That was Obama. Obama liked his coups. He also backed the coup against the democratically elected leader of Honduras, and also
what could go wrong there? That turned out great
in Venezuela. Yeah, no, Honduras is stable, like rock solid these days. Never better.
It's as people say, it's a ransom-based economy now.
Yeah, beautiful.
At
least it's not biting us in the ass in any way, so it doesn't matter. No blowback there.
None. There's no repercussions. I mean, there never
what could go wrong?
Great. What could possibly go wrong? So what happens going forward? I mean, this exchange. Now, Pakistan is a nuclear power. Iran is soon to be a nuclear power.
Well, Iran could be anytime they want to be.
That's not easy. It's not as easy as it used to be. It's not an easy thing to do. So what? I'm trying to think. What's the law? But let's focus on Pakistan, Iran first, and then go to work down the list. But is everyone happy now? You lob missiles at us. We lob missiles at you.
Okay. For now, I think that will hopefully lie. Look, I think cool heads generally prevail in Islamabad and in Tehran. And so they probably will decide to both stand down at this point, but that could change in a second, in a heartbeat.
Now, let me ask you this.
But Iran doesn't really have beef with Pakistan. So that's why it's a little unusual.
I was going to ask you, is there the kind of bad blood that, say, between like Pakistan has with India, for instance?
Oh, no, not at all. No, India, no. Pakistan's never gone to war with India. I mean, Iran's never gone to war with Pakistan. They have gone to war with India 3 times, 4 if you count it differently, and with China over Kashmir.
Yeah, I was going to say, Pakistan has gone to war with China. I know that.
So there isn't really. They don't really have beef. It's been generically, they don't have a huge border, either. So, most of that border is Afghanistan, that on that side. So it's really the Balochi thing is kind of like this little corner. It's not I suspect this will be a tempest in a teapot, and we're going to look back and think, no big deal. Now, look, Iran is not like really a militarily expansionist country. Historically, the last time it was, you have to go back to the Middle Ages. It's just, they haven't really been, if anything, they've been contracting since last like 700 years. So, it's when you look at historical Persia, which extended all the way out to what is today Tajikistan under the Sogdian Empire, it's just not, there's no comparison. But I think the Iranians are going to, they're probably going to chill right now. They're trying to figure out ways. I think what this really was a test. It's a probe to see what, if anything, would happen, to see how the US, how the UN, and other major powers, the EU, were going to respond. Like, are they going to care? Can we get into the occasional? The US is already in the missile strike business. They bomb whoever the fuck they want, whenever the fuck they want, and they get away with it. Can we just start doing that too? That's, look at the Houthis. The Houthis proved you can do that. And, the Biden could say, well, we bombed you 3 times to show you that you can't get away with it. Well, I guess the thing is, maybe you can't get away with it in that you will be punished, but the punishment is never going to be big enough to deter you.
Yeah, on that, I'm thinking we need to move the American fleet to and patrol with and guard shipping lanes, and probably escort, very much like we had escorts in World War II. If these guys show up in their little blow up boats, then
However, most of the attacks are not the pirate attacks with blow up boats. Most of the attacks are missile and drone attacks, and they have boat drone attacks too. So
what do you mean?
They have submersible drones that attack these vessels.
I'm so glad we spend so much time and energy as a species figuring out new and inventive ways to kill each other.
We're great. We're the best.
Who was I talking to about this the other day? And the Scott Stantis theory of humanity, which is whenever we discover a new technology, no matter what it is, we always ask the 3 basic questions. Can I eat it? Can I fuck it? And can I kill someone with it? It's always the first 3 questions we always ask when we discover anything new. And so, of course, we could be talking to the dolphins. We could be friends with the orca. Instead, we're like developing underwater drones. Now, it can't be. Now, okay, here's the dream of dream, folks. And then we'll cut to the break. Underwater flamethrower drone.
Ooh, I'm just like, I'd like to be alone now, Scott.
Well, on that note, we're cut off this segment. We'll be back, and we will be talking about, important stuff.
Indeed.
Stuff that you're thinking about.
Stay tuned for important stuff.
Stay tuned for important stuff. This is the DMZ America podcast. I'm editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis, coming to you from the right.
And I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall, coming to you from the left.
And we shall return.
Much like MacArthur.
As promised, we are returned to the DMZ America podcast for Thursday, January 18th, 2024. I'm editorial cartoonist Scott Stantis. I'll be coming to you from the right.
And I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall. And for now, continue to come to you from the left.
Before he gets sent to the camps, which apparently one of the leading candidate for one of the parties has said he should, we should be.
That's true.
We who oppose him. Well, of course, we're talking about what happened in the Iowa caucuses. We won't know anything about the Democratic caucuses for 2 months, which boggles my mind, but there it is. And we have to talk about.
Is that true? Oh yeah, that's right, because they're not counting.
Yeah, it's a mail-in vote, and they won't count them until March.
March
now,
4th. Right?
You talk about us. How much this is political horse trading at the weirdest level. And this also makes you think, you know what, when you hear the Bidens emailing each other about the big guy, it really starts to come into focus to me, because this was clearly Biden needed South Carolina in 2020. He had to have it. He lost Iowa. He lost New Hampshire. He had to win. He had to have a win. And so the South Carolina Democratic Party clearly said, okay, boy, here's what we'll do, boy. you make us the first primary in the country, boy. And Biden
You really
shuffled
think it
along.
was, you think it goes back to that time?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, that was definitely this is the payoff. The
Mm.
payoff is, and you strip. I mean, we talked about this on your radio show on Sputnik, but I think it still makes me giggle. Help me remember the name of the Minnesota congressman who's on running against him.
He's the Lion of Minnesota, Dean Phillips.
Dean Phillips. Dean Phillips. I'm telling you, he's the only one on the ballot. They're now trying to push a write-in candidacy for Joe Biden because all of a sudden the idiots woke up
off the ballot.
He took himself off the ballot to make South Carolina the first
Yep.
the first primary in the country. Well, New Hampshire, there's nothing in New Hampshire to be proud of. Like I said, even that stone face that was on their
Man in the mountain,
border,
right?
It collapsed. It no longer exists. It's a pile of rubble at the bottom of a cliff.
It's basically an uglier, more depressing Vermont is what it is.
So
it is.
So what did they have to cling to? Every 4 years, they become the epicenter, the terra firma, the terra del fuego of American politics, the first primary of the season, of the presidential season. And and Biden, and I'm convinced it had to have been a backroom deal, said, you know what? No one, fuck them. I'll give it to you guys.
Yeah, well, not to mention, I'm sure he also wasn't feeling too warm and fuzzy about New Hampshire after coming in number 5 out of 5. So
yes, exactly. So Dean Phillips is going to win that. Because here's the thing, Ted. They're pushing Biden as a write-in candidate, and the polls have shown it the people they polled said he would win. But you only go out and vote write-in candidate for a passionate cause. I mean, Bernie, who wasn't write-in, but he was that kind of caliber uprising. Mm-hmm. This is an uprising.
Bernie Sanders, but Bernie was on the ballot.
Right. No, but
as much as the DNC would have liked that not to have been the case.
But do you understand what I'm saying? The passion of Bernie Sanders, of that movement. The passion of a movement is what gets people to get out and vote, and lets write-in candidates win.
Well, no, you're right, Scott, and no question. And in addition to that factor, is the fact that there's that New Hampshire is an open primary state, which parenthetically I think is a stupid fucking idea. I don't know why Democrats should be able to vote in Republican primaries or vice versa. I don't see why they should be allowed to. It seems to violate the whole idea of a party primary, or a primary system or a two-party system or whatever. I would love for someone to explain to me what the purpose of it is or what the advantages are. But anyway, the point is New Hampshire is an open primary state. And so, if you're a New Hampshirite, a New Hampshirean,
New Hampshirezoid,
a New
Hampster.
A New Hampshire. If you're a New Hampshire, anyway, so if you're a person from NH, you are basically, which means you exist for one purpose, which is to drive across the border to Massachusetts, to have people from Massachusetts drive across the border to you to buy liquor on Sundays. That's the main purpose of New Hampshire.
Its main function.
Yeah, that's why New Hampshire has a Massachusetts package store based economy. So if you're in New Hampshire, God, take long enough to get to the point, Dad. You are you're sitting there like, okay, well, I can vote. Let's say I'm a registered Democrat, which I am, but if I'm a registered Democrat, I'm like, okay, I can vote in this primary that the party isn't counting. The delegates aren't going to count. It's purely just a poll, right? It does nothing. It has no effect whatsoever. So even if Dean Phillips wins 90% of the vote, he doesn't get a single delegate to show for this. Nothing happens. Or I can cross party lines and go vote on the Republican side where there's some action going on, where, there's a possibility of, look, compared to the Democrats, there's a far greater chance that DeSantis or Haley will be president than Dean Phillips. I mean, Dean Phillips will not be president. So Biden will be the nominee no matter what, unless he's dead. So, I think there's going to be a lot of crossovers. I think a lot of people, a lot of Democrats are going to cross over and vote on the Republican side. And I think they're going to some of them are going to be trying to just cast an anti-Trump vote. Others will be trying to make mischief. I don't know what mischief will look like in their minds, but I think those are the people, many of whom would have voted for Biden, and they're gonna be gone, and they're gonna go over to the Republican.
Yeah. And getting back to my point, you write in a candidate either out of protest or out of passion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, think of this would be the opposite of passion. When a candidate tells your state, go fuck yourself.
Right.
I don't care.
I hate you.
I hate you. Oh, by the way, I'm back. Vote for me.
Yeah, you know what this is like? This is like your wife leaves you. She comes home one night and she says, man, I found a new dude. Man, he's balls deep every night. It's awesome. Feels so great. I hate you. I'm taking the house. I'm taking the cat. I'm taking the boat and the kid. Eat shit and die. Oh, and I've cleared out our bank accounts. Good luck. Have a nice life. Then 6 months later, when she comes to regret her decision, she's like, hey, asshole, will you come over and cut my lawn? And you're like, I don't know if I really feel like cutting your lawn right now.
Yeah.
It's like that.
It's exactly like that. And so I mentioned this on your show. So if you listen to Ted's show, and you should, I'm repeating myself, but it's going to be an amazing Wednesday morning when the headlines are Dean Phillips wins New Hampshire primary, Democratic primary. On the Republican side, it's going to be Trump. I mean, all this bullshittery, Ted, it makes
but
me
not
nuts.
this will be, I think, the speed bump on his way to the nomination. I think
Mm-hmm.
this will be his lowest margin of victory. I think he's going to win. I think Nikki Haley will do this. We'll see peak Haley. I think that means maybe 28% or something like that. DeSantis, maybe 10. And then, Trump takes the rest. I think that's how that goes. And then, you could also get some strange result because New Hampshireans are a weird lot. They might give Asa Hutchinson 8% or something.
Well, he dropped out.
But they might not care. You're still on the ballot even if you dropped out. I mean, I voted for John Edwards after he dropped out in 2008. People do that. I think but that'll be it. So first let's close New Hampshire. What do you think? What message, if any, does it send if Dean Phillips either wins or almost wins in New Hampshire?
People aren't listening to me, Ted, and I know how Ted Rall feels because Ted is so often the voice in the wilderness. I'm telling you, this will be catastrophic to the Biden campaign for the simple reason, yes, and here's why. Because Biden is being perceived as old, doddering, and ineffective. And what makes you look more old, doddering, and ineffective than losing to a little-known Minnesota congressman in the first primary in the nation?
Well, they're going to spin it. How.
Oh, they're going to try.
They'll say,
"Well,
look, he dropped out. He wasn't even on the ballot." I mean,
you can say that, and people are going to go around the country who aren't wonks, who aren't dorks like, I don't know, you and me, who actually follow this stuff, and they wake up Wednesday morning and they hear that, they're going, "What the fuck?"
That's
just
true.
happened
on just the Twitter. It's just the way most people get their news. A Twitter headline.
Yeah. So they're going to look at this and go, "Whoa, what he lost to who?
Yeah.
Is that the sausage guy?" This will be catastrophic. Biden will still limp towards the nomination. It's his for the asking. It's his for the losing. He could, potentially, and more and more people are predicting something weird coming out of the conventions. You did a cartoon based on that.
Could this set a fire? Could it create fever?
No. Although to be honest, a few times I've only heard him speak.
He's very likable.
He's likable. He's amenable. He is saying, "I'm not doing this because I hate Joe Biden. I'm doing this because I think we need younger leadership."
Yeah, he literally votes with Joe Biden 100% of the time.
So Is he an attractive candidate? Yeah, he is.
By
If he wins?
comparison.
Well, what isn't? I mean, good God. I mean, anyone with a pulse is going to do better than Joe Biden. I mean,
True,
truly,
true.
by comparison. And Biden is not allowing himself to be compared. He's not debating them. He's not being
I
seen on the same
know.
stage. But oh my God. I mean, I don't know that this would be such a long shot. But Dean Phillips, let's say he wins New Hampshire and everyone starts looking at him more seriously. I don't even know if he's on the ballot in South Carolina.
I don't know either.
Um,
I know they took him off the ballot in a few states, I think it took him off the ballot in Florida because the state DNC decided to allocate all their delegates automatically to Biden. Nice democracy
that
you got there. So what do you think about DeSantis? DeSantis has decided to skip all campaigning in New Hampshire, which I found that to be a surprising decision, very
Yeah.
reminiscent of Giuliani's campaign. And
You mean President Giuliani? Yeah.
yeah,
Really
exactly.
great.
That was well done. I think he skipped everything before Florida, if memory serves.
Yeah. Yeah. He put all his eggs in the Florida basket. And if you remember, Ted was working with me on my comic strip Prickly City. He was editing at the time. And I had the candidate, Kevin, the lost bunny of the apocalypse, running in the Republican primary in Guam.
Yes.
And it still has, in fact, I flew the flag the other day of the Johnston Atoll. They actually have a flag. And I actually
be careful because Iran's about to bomb that. But so what about so he's going straight to South Carolina. Obviously, that's Nikki Haley's home state. The two of them are fighting for second place. What is his strat? What is DeSantis's thinking behind skipping New Hampshire and trying to?
I can't figure it out.
South Carolina.
I honestly can't figure it out. I thought the DeSantis campaign has been a disaster from the beginning. His strengths his example he should have looked at is Richard Nixon 1968. And that is, yeah, I'm not likable. I don't have charm. I'm incredibly competent. And that's what Nixon ran on in 68. His knowledge was extremely deep on most of the issues. You go to Florida. Florida is a remarkably well-run state.
Nixon was also willing to commit treason by making a secret deal with North Vietnam.
You're talking about 72.
68. You don't know about that? Oh yeah, we should talk about that offline, but I'll send you links. Yeah, no, he made he committed a sort of Iran-Contra cake kind of thing in 1968 where he sent an emissary to the north and said hey, you might like me to be the and so they asked the North Vietnamese to send signals to the electorate about who they would be more likely to make peace with, and they basically let it be known that it was Nixon. And then some voters were affected by that. There are a lot of people who think that Richard Nixon was a traitor because of that.
Well, okay, whatever the case may be, I think getting back to DeSantis, and I think blowing off New Hampshire is a massive mistake on his part. I think he could have, if he's looking for second place, he came in second in Iowa.
Yeah, well, it's very weird. Nikki Haley's acting like she came in second.
Yeah, it's very strange, and it was close, obviously, but so what?
Southerners don't usually do well in New Hampshire, though, right? I mean, so I can't.
Clinton won, or
he's not a real Southerner.
Arkansas?
It's not the deep South. I know it was a Confederate state, but I mean, it's the South, but it's not. Mississippi. It ain't. It's not. It's not Florida.
No. Well, Florida. I never. What's weird? I always jars me to think of Florida as a Southern state because I know it is, and I know it's seceded. I know, but it just doesn't seem like it. And I think that's because there's so many.
In Miami, it doesn't seem like it, but
yeah. Well, any of it. I mean, but anyway. So I think you and I agree. DeSantis skipping New Hampshire is a huge mistake. Putting all your eggs in South Carolina, which is weird given that is obviously Nikki Haley's backyard.
I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think he'll actually do better than she will in South Carolina. South Carolina.
And that would be incredibly embarrassing to her. And her campaign ends there. I mean, let's face it.
I think her campaign ends there no matter what.
Well, unless she wins it, which would be stunning. No, she won't. I mean, like, I mean, I've driven across South Carolina recently, and it is Trump country to its marrow. I mean, there is just no, I cannot conceive of a way that she could win it. I know that she was a popular governor. She was a two-term governor of the state,
But it's been a
but
while too. Let's not
it's been a
forget
while.
that.
Yeah, it's been a while. It has. So, all righty, why don't we tie this up into a neat little bow, and we'll be back and for another and final segment of the DMZ America podcast for Thursday, January 18th, 2024. I'm Scott Stantis, editorial cartoonist, coming to you from the right.
And I'm editorial cartoonist Ted Rall, coming to you from the left.
And as promised, we are back, unlike the news industry. See what I did there?
Yes.
Another news organization, another report has come out that the LA Times is hemorrhaging money, and the Washington Post
sad.
is hemorrhaging.
So
I know.
sad.
I know.
I weep
Ted.
for them, for my former comrades who were always there for me in my struggles. They were so loyal.
They were
I love
brothers in
you.
arms.
I love you. See you on the unemployment line, fuckers.
You may want to look up Ted Rall, comma, Los Angeles Times. There's no love lost there. Dr. Pat Shung,
Soon Xiong.
thank you, who made his money by denying drugs to cancer patients.
Breast cancer patients in particular, who are the most reprehensible of all cancer patients.
Yes, of all of
they're
the
always
cancer,
the people that, at least that's what Dr. Pat seems to think.
so uncool to have breast cancers.
Yeah, he
So
drives
uncool.
around LA. He's the only person in America with a, we all have those pink ribbon stickers on the back of our cars, but his has like the red cross, the red slash through it.
Yeah, the circle and the slash. A Washington Post is allegedly, but it's privately owned, so we don't know the exact number, but the rumors are that it's upwards of $100 million a year. It's losing. The news deserts across the United States are growing bigger. Literally, we're losing 2 newspapers a month. Many of them, including where I live here at in Birmingham, Alabama, the Newhouse newspapers have gotten rid of the print editions for the Huntsville Times, the Birmingham News, and the Mobile Press Register. I mean, I know that you and listening now have had some significant hits against your newspapers and your news gathering organizations. Ted, I mean, this is the end of democracy. I mean, really. I mean, without newspapers, without the watchdog. I mean, and all the bloggers and all the tweeters and all the TikTokers can say all they want, but they don't go to zoning board meetings. They don't sit through the grindingly boring city council meetings.
No, they don't.
And report on them. They don't comb through the city and county budgets. And that was always kind of the yeoman's work of local journalism. And when it dies, democracy dies. I mean, at the very least, if you're a corrupt local politician, these are the salad days. These are the good old days.
Oh, these are like, yay.
These are the best. Is this hyperbole? Am I overreacting?
No, I don't think you're overreacting. I think, you could just keep going. I mean, like, for example, it's also like not only local investigative and state investigative reporting, it's hard to imagine how a scandal like Watergate would have ever happened without the long time, the competitive investigative reporting that, of course, we all know about Woodward and Bernstein at the Washington Post, but also at the New York Times, who they were competing against, and they were trying to get scoops. It's hard to imagine, not to mention also, let's just say, for example, DC Mayor Marion Barry, or the work that the Chicago Tribune, your paper, did on the Governor Blagojevich scandals, selling Obama's vacated seat for the U.S. Senate. I mean, not only is there the work of exposing it, but then newspapers had the unique ability to really keep the pressure on through the opinion page, through op-eds, through editorials, through editorial cartoons, and that's gone. I mean, so basically it's like, I think the death of newspapers helps to explain what's his name? Oh God, the Republican congressman who's just George Santos. he survived, how he was able to survive as long as he did, because there's no local paper there that was going to hold him to account, even though the local paper exposed him initially and caught him, but nobody cared because there was no big, strong local paper with an opinion presence. I think it's like, I mean, yes, some shit has moved to Facebook groups, and I don't want to take anything away from that. It's not like it's all gone away, but there isn't a big swinging dick in most, like there used to be in most communities. Like where I grew up in Dayton, the Dayton Daily News was the powerhouse source for opinion and news in the Miami Valley in southwestern Ohio. And like, so if they figured out that you were, as a politician, up to no good, and they published it in the paper, if you weren't smart enough to resign right away, they're coming after you, and you were going to have, Mike Peters, the cartoonist, and every columnist going after you until you fucking did the right thing and quit. And they'd be leaning on the local DA to indict you. I mean, it's just, now I think if the same thing happened, most of the people who live in Montgomery County, they do not read the Dayton Daily News. Some of them are reading Patch, some of them are reading a local Facebook group. They're all over the place, and it makes all the difference. It's like everything is scattered, and in some ways that's better because it's small d democratic. We all have access, but there's no center, there's no locus of power, and that to hold the politicians to account.
Well, and let's also follow up on television and radio. When I came into the business, and I'm going to sound like the old man I am, radio stations really had news departments. That, in fact,
well, they were often owned by the same company that owned the local paper too.
Well, certainly WGN, which means world's greatest newspaper, is a talk radio in Chicago, as well as the television station there, which had a national footprint, which it decided to get rid of. God knows why. But anyway, so the radio and television, they had newsrooms. I mean, and so the number one source of news for most Americans remains the evening news. Problem with that is,
well, I don't think that's true. I think the number one source.
No, it is.
I think I thought it was like Twitter feed.
No. It still remains for most Americans. Don't forget, there's still a crap ton of old people, Americans, and we sit down for dinner and we turn on the evening news. The local news stations have, you think your newspaper has been eviscerated? I challenge you to go to a television newsroom and you want to see evisceration and just see miles and acres of desks with nary a person at them. They have been hollowed out, and that's why local news sucks. Here in Birmingham, Alabama, you could have a pretty good local newsroom, television newsroom that did really good work. They're gone. They're absolutely gone. And so again, what does that leave behind? A lot of the, the Trumpites, a lot of the, the MAGA Nation people are celebrating this. It's not a good thing. It truly is not. Is there bias in the news coverage? There is now. It's worse than ever. Why? Because the people didn't support it, which means it didn't have the money, which means it couldn't have the staff to actually vet, news stories to strip out the bias that I think, and oftentimes the reporters may have towards their subject. So now you're having reporters literally post stories to the newspaper, the news site, directly from their phones. I mean, so there's no vetting, there's no editing, there's no nothing. So, and in addition, you see typos that are egregious. I mean, here's how bad the typos are, Ted. I can see them.
and I edit you sometimes.
Yes. And
so I know.
Ted knows I am the worst speller.
Oh my God, Scott, we've got to talk about this. I've never talked to you about this offline, but man, when you post this podcast, holy shit, you got to proofread. Like
I do.
I mean, do you use a human to proofread it, or?
Well, I use myself. I like to think I'm human.
Yeah, you might want to have the wife take a look at that.
Is it that? It's
execrable, man. It's like D. It's like D minus. It's like a disaster. I always have to go in and fix up half of everything.
This is Ted's mother coming through. Ted's mother was teacher of the year in Ohio. So okay. No, okay. Yeah, that's possible. I try to do my best. I do, but okay. Yeah, I'm a terrible. That's how bad the spelling has gotten in newspapers, though. If I can see it, that means literate people can actually see it.
That's true. It's
Are you looking up
like,
an exam? I see you. I can see you looking at your screen. Are you looking up my mistakes?
Yeah. However, I realize I always fix them, so I can't really like prove it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for fixing it.
I think you should give me this one.
No, I'm not. I'm just like it looks okay to me, and I actually go over it more than once. Okay.
No.
Don't wow me. Come on.
Wow. Oh my God. Like, what the fuck? No,
okay.
but it's like, all right. I'm not going to get into detail here. Like, anyway.
Thank you for not doing that. I appreciate
a lot of it's weird because look, a lot of super smart people can't spell for shit, and you're one of them. My father was one of them too. I don't really get it, but also
Well,
I was a geek, so.
No, you are. I mean, and you're a good editor, so thank you. And I do thank you for going in and fixing what mistakes I make. So thank you.
And honestly, I don't care at all.
So all that being said, we are in terror. I mean, so what's the first, what are among the first thing that the newspapers jettisoned? I mean, they didn't last very, and that's the editorial cartoonists, the one area where people genuinely liked it. I don't know how far into the weeds we want to go, Ted, but if I may just say that, editors, to this day, a multi-billion-dollar industry is dying. It'll be dead. I mean, literally dead within the next few years.
Well, it'll be I think what it's going to be is an industry that used to have thousands of papers and dozens of major players, hundreds of major players at one point. And I think it's going to have, there's going to be 10 major players. And they're, so like the Washington Post isn't going anywhere. Even though Jeff Bezos can afford to lose $100 million a year.
Yeah, but he doesn't want to. That's how billionaires make money, is they make money. They don't lose money.
Well, that's true. I mean, look, Scott, this is a question I've really been wanting to ask you, because whenever I think this, I read about this topic, I'm always like, Scott, you've worked at many newspapers, and so you've seen this. And in this article that kind of prompted this particular discussion here, there was a quote from someone who said, when you look at like CNN.com, they look at like websites that are just news only, and no one there uses the word digital, and that tells you everything you need to know, because it's so obvious. Like digital, well, there's no non-digital. I mean, it's it just is, and so but Scott, here's the thing. So Jeff Bezos, not an idiot, okay, absolutely revolutionized retail consumerism, transformed the economy, arguably reshaped the brick and mortar stores and gutted them. And like absolutely has changed the way even that we store data, the way that the Amazon, I mean, the cloud, they own the cloud. Amazon is the cloud. They're a major streaming service. He's not a fucking idiot in any way other than his taste in women. So like the thing is, his girlfriend, like the first wife was better. Anyway, the point is, Bezos, he takes over the Washington Post. How come he didn't do anything at the Washington Post? I mean, the Washington Post didn't change as a product. Before Jeff Bezos came along, it was a newspaper, a website, and an app, and they still are. And those things aren't really any significantly different than they were before he came along. There's no revolution. There's no new idea. When Dr. Pat-Soon Chiang purchased the LA Times, he also was like, look, again, I mean, not as smart as Jeff Bezos by any means, but still a brilliant grifter and biotech entrepreneur, business person. And he certainly, if he's not smart enough to make the change, he's smart enough to hire someone who could make the change. There's no change. I mean, the LA Times literally does not do anything differently than it did before. And we've seen the same thing happen when Warren Buffett bought a bunch of newspapers. He was not able to change. I think he had like papers like the Buffalo News and such. He didn't change anything. Why don't they ever change anything?
The only thing I can figure, Ted, and I mean, it's a great question, is that the people at the top of newspapers are so intractable that even the owner of the newspaper cannot make them budge from the old paradigms. They simply are, and the editors, believe me when I say this, and you know I'm right. The editors who are there, the editors who who are still there, are dunderheads. They're not forward looking. They're looking to make enough money to get to retirement. And the rest of the industry be damned. They want to keep the status quo as as possible.
Scott, if you had $10 billion and you were like, I'm now purchasing, whatever, XYZ, you name the paper, you let's say USA Today, you buy USA Today. And they say like, yeah, the editor's like, I don't know if I'm that. Yes, sir, I'll do what you said. And then like you check back a month later, nothing's been done. You would fire the fucker. And then you'd hire someone new.
Yes.
And say,
yeah,
I fired the last asshole who disobeyed me. So I'm now, if you don't want to be fired, you will do what I say. And they will.
Let me give you an example. Sam Zell buys the Chicago Tribune Company and buys the LA Times brilliantly for $2 billion with a B. Yeah. But what they did do in Chicago, what they tried to do, which was the right move, they owned the Chicago Tribune, the number one paper in the state. They owned ChicagoTribune.com, the number one news site in the state. They owned WGN Radio, which at the time was a top 5 radio station. They owned WGN Television, which wasn't just a local TV station. It also aired the Cubs and had a national footprint. It had over 74 million viewers. What Zell saw that there was diminishing return from all 3 of them, and he was right. So what he and his people tried to do was, for instance, they moved the newsroom, the radio, WGN radio newsroom, into the middle of the Chicago Tribune newsroom. The presumption is that they would share information and that you would have cross-platform pollination. They refused to talk to each other. They literally just said, we are not going to talk to them. They are not going to talk to us. This is our turf and you stay off of it. That's their turf and we'll stay off of that.
So why didn't Sam Zell come in there and bang their heads together?
I have no earthly idea, because Sam Zell,
because he was too busy, he wasn't really like roll up. I think that's part of it, and get in there and find out what's going on.
He was buying up tons of real estate in Brazil, if you remember at the time. He said that's the market that's going to boom. Wah, wah. But that was his passion.
While he was hanging out with the macaws and the toucans.
Yeah, it didn't work out quite so much. I think you're right. I think Bezos, same way. He's busy with his girlfriend, his yachts, and his business. And the Washington Post is something,
a side project.
Yeah, and look, if Dr. Pat doesn't go into the LA Times, his idiot daughter does.
Yeah, you know what this reminds me of? Like I like Shark Tank, and when you watch it, they say like, oh, like Lori will say like, oh, I'll be calling you all the time, or Mark Cuban, I'll be checking in, you'll give my expertise. And I'm like thinking, this show's been on for 15 seasons, and each of these sharks has probably invested in hundreds of companies, right? It's like, well, I mean, they're only human beings, right? I mean, I assume Mark Cuban has a family. I mean, he had until recently the Mavericks to run. That was his main project. I mean, I guess the whole thing is that no one person can really do all of these things, and they end up not paying much attention, because ultimately, it's like, look, it's like on a lesser level for you and me, Scott. If I have a client that pays me the most gets my most attention. The client
Yeah.
that pays me the least gets me my least attention. And it's like I don't work as hard for the latter. I think that's how it is. It's like, Bezos looks at the Washington Post. He's like, I'm losing money there. I'll work on this other shit. I'll work on the cloud
Yeah.
with the
Well,
defense.
they come in and they think that they can magically, because they're geniuses, because they're billionaires. And if you've ever heard interviews with billionaires, you know this not to be true.
That is not
But
true.
they are convinced that they are geniuses, and they're the ones who are going to come in and fix journalism.
Yeah.
Dr. Pat was going to fix the Los Angeles Times. I mean, you and I have
But he
ideas
never
about the
had a
Los
big
Angeles.
he didn't have a big
No,
idea.
they
Like,
have
like you and I have big ideas for like what
Yes.
we would do for newspapers.
Yeah. And if we had the LA Times, we would do things like partner with Variety or with
Hollywood
the
Reporter.
Hollywood Reporter, somehow have some kind of synergy there and have
Yeah,
the
the LA Times
do-
should be the national media organization for the entertainment business.
And yeah, and
It should be
always
the Wall
shied away
Street
from
Journal of entertainment.
it has shied away from that role and that, frankly, that charge. And I was a subscriber back in the 70s. It has always shied away from that. And I, to this day, cannot understand why, other than the owners always had this conceit that they were going to make it the New York Times of the West Coast. And that is, there wasn't a reason to have that, because on the West Coast, you could get the New York Times. So it'd be like in your apartment, Ted, who says, I'm going to be the Ted Rall of this apartment. Well, there's already a Ted Rall of that apartment. There doesn't need to be.
Right.
But what's not there is I could cover Clovis, and Clovis, all things Clovis that Ted isn't doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that comes back to my thesis on the news industry, which is they destroyed a multi-billion-dollar business because they were idiots running it. Yeah. They were bona fide morons. Not one of them has ever either apologized or owned up to it, Ted. I've never heard an interview anywhere in the country of any of the former publishers or former editors saying, you know what? I should have done this different. I screwed it up. I screwed up. Not one of them. They're all like, oh, the internet came in. Really? Because, God knows nobody ever made money on the internet, Ted. Ever. Not a red cent. Oh, wait. You can make it work. Now, what's the secret
It is weird
sauce?
to me that like even Bezos didn't spend like a weekend on the yacht thinking about the Washington Post and like what to do and like, well, how can we change this up?
Well, they did try, if you remember, and they always try early on. They have their little ideas. Mm-hmm. And interestingly, they're little ideas. They're not big ideas. They're little
maybe
ideas.
Part of maybe like Warren Buffett concluded that ultimately nothing could be done. Anyway, I interrupted. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying with Bezos, I mean, his idea was to fold it into Amazon Prime. Anyone who had Amazon Prime would automatically get a digital subscription to the Washington Post. That lasted 6 months, and now I have Amazon Prime. I don't have a subscription to the Washington Post.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They don't. So it's also follow through, and these guys are used to, trying something. Fail fast is the function of the internet, and so that's where these guys. The LA Times is going to be sold, or it's going to go. He's just going.
I think it's going to close. Yeah, I think it's going to fold.
I don't think it can fold. I still think. Here's the thing, Ted. Print still makes money. That's the weirdest thing of all.
True.
So they're going to go Sunday only. The LA Times, the Washington Post, like you said, you hope it sticks around because it is such a vital component.
It's an important paper, but they're fucking up so many ways. I mean, like, well, first of all, we talked about this. Opinion is like the future, right? I mean, basically, people say they want unbiased news, but they don't. What they really want is opinionated news, right? And I think the heart of a news organization should be a really vibrant town square in the form of a vibrant opinion section. And like the Washington Post doesn't have any like, let's say Bernie Sanders supporters or anyone to the left of like a Hillary Clinton supporter. They have a bunch of neocons on their op-ed page. It's a good op-ed page, but it's very redundant. It's like one after another who are all the same. It's like, it's weird because the Wall Street Journal, you could say is similar, but that there's more variety. It's like kind of like carefully curated. All the different strains of conservatism are represented there. And that's just not true about the Washington Post. It's like a really deadly, boring opinion section, I think. And I think it's hurting them enormously. They could probably beef up the local and regional coverage, because whenever I delve into it, it's really smart. But like the app is like mismanaged. There are articles that have literally been in my feed in the app, like up front on top of the app, the same article for like a month. And I'm like, what's it? Why is this here? I mean, it's not like this was a copyrighted story that, that like changed the world or something. It's just a story. And it's like, it's just poorly run.
Yeah. And
like
that's
the New
my
York Post
point.
is a mean, crazy organization that really seems to know what they're doing, for example.
Yeah.
And the Times has become like this empire, right? Like they have all the newsletters, like the Wirecutter newsletter that you can pay extra to get more. The New York Times definitely seems to know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, they have some good aggressive leadership, and they actually pay real salaries. Don't forget. I mean, I can remember Chicago Tribune when I first got there in 09, about, I'd say 6 to 10 months into it, we had one of our digital guys was being moved and took a job, and he was our lead digital guy. And, you kind of say, why would you leave? You're the top, you're like 30 and you're the top digital guy at the Chicago Tribune. And it's because the place that was hiring him literally tripled his salary and gave him
that's hard to refuse.
And gave him far better benefits,
Mhm.
like, because I can guarantee you the health insurance I had at the Chicago Tribune sucked, and just got progressively got worse. Okay, well, now I guess if
Now let's kill ourselves.
yeah.
All right. Okay, so don't kill yourself, everyone. But if you do,
No.
call a suicide hotline first, just
Yes,
so
please.
that you can check in before you kill yourself. Anyway, so Scott, where can people find your stuff outside of the DMZ America podcast?
Well, please go to gocomics.com/Scott Stantis for my editorial cartoons, and go to gocomics.com/Prickly City to check out my political comic strip. You can go to the chicagotribune.com/opinion and see a gallery of the work I do for them. And now you can go to the Dallas Morning News. Their URL is dallasnews.com, and check out the work I've started to do for them. And really, what's very, very cool is Ted and I are involved in Center Clip, which are mini podcasts, not like this long, arduous, impossible to listen to podcast you're listening to right now, but these are short ones. They're 30 seconds, no longer than 5 minutes. They're quick takes, and I really love it, because when something breaking news happens, I can just, open it up, say a quick whatever, and I know that Ted's on it. We have some other friends who are on it. So centerclip.com. So Ted, where can we see all things Ted?
You can find all things Ted at Rall.com, also at whowhatwhy.org on Saturdays, and check out the Center Clip with Scott. And I'm on Counterpoint newsletter from time to time, once in a blue moon. But there's other good cartoons there. And you can used to be Scott, used to be there. We miss you. And then also the radio show Final Countdown is on Radio Sputnik, now on X Spaces. So that's very exciting. And I would say that's probably the best place to find it. The stream there, it's also on Rumble, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern, live, but you could watch them not live, in which case Angie and I will be dead, but you'll be able to watch us.
Well, don't be dead yet.
No.
We like having you around, Ted.
Not dead yet.
Okay, that ties things up in a neat little package for us here at the DMZ America podcast. Until next time, we'll see you in the funny papers.
Indeed. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Ciao.
Okay, I will now turn this off.